Hilton brings you new ways to stay with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
In a moment, we're going to introduce Father Nathan Kessel. He's a Dominican priest, and he talks about in his series of books called Afterlife Interrupted Series. Is death survivable? Does time exist in the afterlife? And from the science side, what we're trying to do in these 2 hours is blend together the concept of, is time an illusion? What do we know when we pass? And who better than an individual that I've sought out and been following now pretty regularly after we've talked for a few months? I want to introduce by giving a little background to Father Nathan Kessel. He's a lecturer, workshop facilitator, a retreat director, who also happens to be a Catholic priest. He's originally from Groves, Texas. He graduated from Trinity University in San Antonio and entered the Dominican order in 1979. He received his master's and master's in divinity degrees from the Dominican School of Philosophy and Theology at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California, and served in campus ministries in California and here in Arizona for 27 years. He was pastor-director of the Catholic community at Stanford University and also at the All Saints Catholic Newman Center at Arizona State University. Father Nathan, good morning to you, and thank you for joining us on this show that I hope opens people's minds, not only in the realms of what they might suffer, people who've had great loss, and maybe tie this into a little conversation, because we've got a lot of time, to talk about the connections that science talks about with what you talk about from a spiritual nature. Good morning, Father. How are you this morning?
I'm great. For me, I'm in Houston today. I'm coming to you from my sister's guest room in Houston because one of my nieces just had twin boys in February, so I'm here for the weekend.
Congratulations. How beautiful. Well, tell us a little bit about your background. I read a very short, brief bio of you. Obviously, you're a Texan. You lived in Groves, Texas, near the Beaumont, Texas area. And as you mentioned, as we talked about, your dad's sisters also became nuns. So tell us, what's the passion for you to become a priest in the Catholic faith? I find this fascinating. I've asked this of others, and I have been a Catholic for the most part of my life, but honestly, I should maybe be a better listener to what you're going to talk about this morning with us.
Well, I grew up in a really practicing Catholic home, and I never had to recover from being Catholic or anything like that. I had great parents, and my mom was a terrific explainer of the faith, not just the religion, but the cosmology of it. You know, we were in first grade in Catholic school. We were being taught about how the universe came to be, why it came to be, our place in it. The idea that I would survive my death was ingrained from first grade, probably even before that. And I was taught that I had a family on earth and a family in heaven, and that I was I was kind of this dual citizen of earth and heaven. That I would always be, that I was loved. So a great many things, and one of the things that my mom taught me to do was spiritual communication, how to talk to my other family. So that's really important. How I got my start. And it just seemed to me that life would be short. I'm surprised, 69 years old, and I'm surprised I've lived this long. I thought I would have a shorter life than this.
Wow, that's amazing.
But it seems like, whatever our duration of time here on the earth is, that it's brief. And I just wanted to do the most important thing I could think of doing. And in the end, for me, that ended up being priesthood, mostly because of the message that we survive our death, which is what Easter is all about.
Well, this is a beautiful story that we're about to hear, and I think many people, they may be sitting there wondering, and hopefully they're not driving and hit the brake on this, but I think in my heart, and I'm sure, your answer we will await, that there is a distinct connection between what science says and what we do believe in our religious faith. And for many years, being a scientist myself, I've been around so many people that are just simply on the atheistic side, and I'm not here to chastise them. That's their belief if they do. But what I'm trying to say, Father, is that so many now in the science community, if you talk, I interview so many scientists, they tell us that there is some sort of a spirituality to this whole universe. And I just wanted to read something, and I'm quoting from your own website here, if you don't mind me doing that. I believe we are eternal. I believe the Creator who made us loves us wildly beyond belief. Your mission, that is, or my mission as you speak, is to help people live in the present, feel loved, and dwell in joyful hope. And as a Catholic priest, I specialize in helping those who feel stuck, whether it is in this earthly life or in the afterlife, and experience freedom. I mean, that's a profound statement. And, again, this home flagship radio station, here, WABC in New York City, I can't even imagine, I should say. That's the word I'll repeat. I cannot even imagine the horrors of all the families that suffered losses from the tragedies that happened on 9/11, and then multiply that to any experience where somebody loses someone in a horrific car accident, a shooting, a stabbing, all the horrible things in crime. So talk to us about the things that you do, and actually what I really should ask you is, how do people follow you? Because I see all across the internet, if people are tuning in right now and maybe have a bunch of questions about when we get into the details, how do they reach you? Because you have so many podcasts and videos on YouTube that talk about this whole connection between the afterlife, spirituality. How do we stay in touch with you? Just to
Yes, it's simple. You're already quoting from the website. The address of it is my name, Nathan, Nathan -Castle, Castle. So Nathan-Castle.com. And then once you're on there, when you go to the upper right-hand corner of it, there's the little icons, and one of them is for the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is named Father Nathan Castle, but you can go on the website and click the icon, and it'll take you right there. So I have a lot of archived classes and retreats and things on there. And then I also have my own podcast, which is called The Joyful Friar, Friar. I'm a Dominican, St. Dominic, that was his nickname, the Joyful Friar, and it's the reason I joined this order, because I wanted to be joyful. I didn't want to be dour. There's too many, I experienced plenty of religious people with frowns, and I didn't want to be that. So
yes.
That's the way to follow me.
Thank you. I'm a graduate of Paramus Catholic High School, for those listening out there that also had the experience, a very good experience. We had brothers at the Christian schools, and let me say this, they were very tough. Discipline was very well measured out to those that needed it, and counseling was available to others. Can you describe the difference, Father, between the Jesuits, which is the Society of Jesus, as I'm reading, founded in 1540 by Ignatius of Loyola, and, of course, the Dominican, those of the Dominican persuasion, as we would like to say. Tell us the differences, if there are any, before we get into this.
Well, we were about 300 years older than the Jesuits. We were founded in 1216 or 1206. The cloistered nuns, the Dominican nuns, were founded first, and then the friars, in 1216. One of the reasons I joined the order is I wanted to be well educated. I didn't want to just rush through a program that ordained me and put me to work. I wanted to make sure I was really well educated. The Jesuits make most of their guys get PhDs, and I just didn't want one. I wanted a more general education than what happens when you have to do a PhD. So I feel like they did a really good job of educating me, and I'm grateful for that.
Yes. Well, the folks out there listening. Oh, go ahead, Father. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Well, I'm sorry. One of the things I was just reflecting with my brother-in-law and one of my nephews that we're the world's oldest democracy. The Magna Carta was modeled after our articles, our Constitution, 810 years ago, something like that. So I appreciated that too, because I believe we all have a part to play, and I like being able to be a part of the conversation.
Father, during this extended interview here with you, and for good reason, I want to light up the phone lines, obviously, if people want to have their questions answered or concerns. But one of the things I wanted to make clear, Father has asked me kindly, we're not going to talk about poltergeists or exorcisms, because that's not necessarily his area of expertise, and I respect that, Father. We're not going to go down that path. So I just say that to the callers. If you do call, we want you to call. And we're actually looking for people out there that may never have called this particular radio station during this time of the late night. if you're in the West Coast, or here in the early morning on this Saturday morning, with particular questions as we get into the details here. And also, maybe in the second hour, I'd like to get your analysis of Pope Leo XIV. I find this fascinating, the first American-born pope, and some of the things that you see him interceding and working with the Catholic faith along the world. So that we can expect later on, if you don't mind doing some commentary on that. But let's get to the heart and soul of the conversation right here. And this, to me, is very fascinating because a long time ago, I've had interviews with folks from the Vatican Observatory. Many people may not know that the Vatican, as you probably know better, has a distinct interest in the astronomical world as we go about the sun. And we had a gentleman named Brother Guy Consolmagno on, and he was amazing. He's an astronomer. He's obviously, as I call him, just an incredible individual talking about spirituality and bringing that close to science and never having the two conflict. So let's talk about your books here, and I find this very, very fascinating as we discuss with you this series of 3 books here, and they're very interesting in my mind. The Afterlife, Interrupted Afterlife, Helping Stuck Souls Cross Over. Now, many people may be going, what the heck are you talking about? But talk to us about this, because I find it fascinating. And what does it really go back to, Father? It goes back to me studying science and also believing in Jesus Christ as our Savior, my Savior too. These intercession things I think find fascinating, and I hope the audience does too. So talk about the book. And the first one that you wrote, The Compulsion for It. Tell us why, and what does it contain, how to help people?
Well, I was ordained when I was 29 years old, and I was working as a campus minister, and I was at Arizona State for 12 years in charge of the campus ministry there. But in childhood, I was praying for what I was taught with the souls in purgatory. When I was a little kid and began to learn about dying and what happens next, it sounded like there were 3 possible destinations that were sort of like nation states in the sky, right. Heaven, hell, and purgatory. And as a little 5 or 6-year-old, it seemed to me that most people weren't perfect and most people weren't horrible, that the most populated one would probably be the one in the middle. Both of my aunts were Dominican first-grade teachers. Most of my dad's sisters, his only 2 siblings, became nuns. And so between my mom teaching me about having a mother on earth and a mother in heaven, when I learned to make the sign of the cross, we cross ourselves over our heart. I had a great love for pirates when I was a little kid. And she said, well, you make it, what letter does that make when you make the sign of the cross? Well, it's an X. And she said, well, what's the X for? Well, in the pirate stories, it's where the treasure's buried. She said, that's exactly right. The treasure's inside you. So we cross ourselves, and then you just knock on your heart, and you say, hello, in there, I want to talk to you. And that's where God lives. So I wasn't praying to a God in the sky. I was praying to the God who lives inside me. Actually, I was doing both, because God is everywhere, and God is in the sky, and God is in my heart. So you can do both.
Well, you say it so well, Father, because I'm just repeating some of the things I wrote down after going through an analysis here, a deep dive into your work. And I quote, you say God is everywhere, which obviously we believe, but he's not the God of New Jersey or the God of New York or California. He's the God of everywhere. And you do the interpolation of bringing together that the Spanish word cielo means sky, of course, and that the blue of the sky meets the earth itself, so that the extension is what? Throughout the heavens, infinite. So God is everywhere. Well said by you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, if you remember that we're on a ball, our feet are touching the ground, and the rest of it is hanging out in space. So we're already there. It's just a matter of breathing it in and taking it to heart. Well, anyway, when I learned, one of my aunts took me aside right before my first communion, and she said, you must listen very carefully to me. God loves everybody and hears everyone's prayers, but the prayers of children go straight to God's heart. You won't be a child for very long, so don't waste your short childhood because you have a superpower. You must pray for everyone and everything you can think of. So I'm 69 years old, and I'm quoting her from when I was 7.
Well, you're doing a very good job of that because, I don't know. I haven't personally suffered. I don't really reveal much about my personal life here to the giant audience here, but, why not? I mean, we're all human, and we all make mistakes, and we all have good and bad things in our lives. But the thing is, I've never personally experienced loss. I know many people that have. I don't really know what it's like. I mean, I've lost my parents. They're very serious, and we love them in my heart.
Sure.
I love them. But the question I ask you before we go to a break here in a few minutes, what is it that we can tell people from your perspective about how to handle loss? I mean, it's a great big subject that would take 50 years to talk about, but from the book that you write, give us some inspiration on
let me try to describe a little bit about what happens in the book. When I was in my early 40s, I had this history of praying for people who had died, and then one night on a retreat, actually north of Phoenix up in Prescott, I was on a retreat, and I went to sleep on Friday night, and somewhere early Saturday morning, I had this dream of a man burning to death on the radiator of a car from the late 50s, the kind with fins and chrome.
And this is Ray, as you describe, Ray, right?
Yeah, he's the first story in book one. And I knew that I was being contacted, that it wasn't just my psychobabble. I used to have to carry a pager if it was my turn to cover the hospital. If someone is in an emergency, Catholic is in an emergency in a hospital in the middle of the night, there's always a priest on duty, on call. And so I was used to having the pager, and this felt like that, like I was being paged without the pager. Somebody was needing me, and so I wrote it down. And then I got with a partner in the morning and said, "Could we pray on this at a break time?" And I knew she was spiritually gifted. She'd been a prayer partner of mine. We went into prayer, and within a few minutes, she said, "Oh my God, this guy really wants to talk to you. Is it okay if I allow him to?" And I knew she could bring people through. I call it the gift of prophecy. It's commonly called mediumship, but in the Catholic Church, that word is upsetting to people, and it's just not worth using it. I think it's the gift of prophecy, which is attested well in the Old and New Testaments in Judaism and Christianity. So anyway, I said, sure. We protected ourselves in prayer with Michael the Archangel and Holy Mary, and go ahead. So he spoke, and that story is in book one. I don't know if you said we're going to a break, so I won't go into it.
Well, we have about a minute, but no, I mean, I know this story is fascinating, but I just want to mention something before we go to that break. Congratulations to you, Father, that your 40th ordination anniversary celebration comes up June the 7th. And congratulations. I mean, that's a lifetime of service to Jesus and God, and I'm sure the people out there appreciate that. But that's amazing. We got about a minute, so if you want to encapsulate some of that, we can hold off on the rest of that story, of course, until you come back.
All right. Well, and people can read it if they're interested enough. But in any event, this man had died 40 years earlier, and we asked him, well, how can we help you? And he said, my wife. Mm-hmm. She's an old woman now. I died when I was 20. She's an old woman now. She's dying of cancer, and I want to greet her when she passes, but I can't the way I am. So we worked with him over a period of 3 weeks, not once a week, and helped him reason his way toward how he might get unstuck and get ready to greet her. And as it turned out, it worked just fine. He just had to shift some thinking and challenge some mistaken assumptions that he had. Once he was willing to do that, he was able to greet her. And he told us that he's since become an afterlife greeter for other people because he was grateful for learning how to do it.
More with Father Nathan Castle as we continue to explore the connection between science as what we know today in the quantum fields and what he's talking about the afterlife and things that he does to help individuals. Your questions, ladies and gentlemen, comment are much appreciated here on this radio station. 1-800-848-9222. We'll be talking about, in his words, how to help people who suffer from grief, loss, and all the connectivity things from our very special guest, Father Nathan Castle. We'll be right back. Let's continue, Father, on this particular subject. I find it fascinating. You're talking about you yourself, and I don't know how to explain this. You can. You're the one who's experiencing this. The ability to have people who are what may be called stuck in between this transition to the afterlife. If you weren't finished with the story of Ray, just give us a summary of that. I think that was interesting.
Well, we asked him, as you would starting any new relationship, how can I help you? How can we help you? And he explained that he had died in a fire in 1960 in rural Georgia. I was only 4 at the time, but he and his wife had. Well, his girlfriend They were seniors in high school when they got pregnant. They got married and had the babies. The baby was about 2 years old when he died in a fire. He was wearing greasy clothes. He had an auto shop, and he doesn't even know how he caught fire, but he died in a fire. He had been taught that the reason that people die at all is because God takes them. So that was what he was taught. Yeah. So he was working with that, and he said, who the hell does he think he is taking me just when my life is getting good?
That's
so
incredible.
He arrived in the afterlife mad at God, mad at the universe. And so he created for himself the closest thing to nothing that he could. So he just hunkered down and kind of created this blank space. His guardian angel was in one corner of it, but he didn't know who that was, just some guy that sits over there and doesn't say anything, leaves me alone. But he said, I've been watching my wife for 40 years. She's an old woman now. She married again. She married up. She married her a lawyer and moved to South Carolina. They didn't have any more kids. He did a great job raising my son. I got no beef with that man, but my wife's dying of cancer, and I want to greet her when she comes, and I can't the way I am.
That's amazing.
He did a good job with it. He explained what his problem was. We said, okay, well, what have you been doing for the last 40 years? Nothing much. I said, well, let me see.
He even had the accent. I love it.
Well, I'm from Texas. I can put it on when I want to. He said, nothing much. I said, and so now cancer's got its own schedule. It's not going to wait on you. We're going to have to hurry, don't you think? He said, I suppose. I said, but you're probably not going to like it. Yeah. People don't really like being hurried. But if I hurry you too much, you just tell me to back off because you're in charge. And then we began to kind of peel away layers. You know, I said, I've known God all my life. And I don't know if I can say shit on your show. He said, what I said.
Well, I guess you just did.
Well, he said his pastor had taught him that God takes people, and I said, well, I'm a pastor too, and I'm a Catholic priest. Oh, shit. And I said, well, yeah, that's what you got here. But we're going to help you, and we did. But we had to. Yes. I said, don't you think you ought to get moving? You're going to have to figure out how to move around and not just stay in one spot. So we need to get somebody to come for you and take you for a walk. What about your mom? Well, she beat me when I said my prayers. I said, well, let's not take her.
That's sad. Yeah.
How about your dad? Well, he died in the war, Korea, and he said, I hardly knew him. And I said, well, did you two ever have a good time together? And he said, yeah, one time we went and looked at cars. I said, okay, well then.
Well, there's the connection, right? The car.
Yeah, and he loved cars, and he had his own auto repair shop. I said, well, if we asked God to send him to come to you, do you think you'd be okay? Would you be afraid? He said, I don't think so. And I said, well, let's tell him that he can only come close enough for you to see him, but no closer. You're in charge. So we said a prayer, and he said, oh, my God, look over there. And I said, I can't see what you're seeing. Well, it's my dad. And I said, well, do you think you're being tricked? No, it's my dad. I said, well, if you
you're like a navigator in this whole story, and I find that fascinating. But, you know, Father Nathan, this is interesting. The callers, I'm sure we have a line of callers here. Let's say good morning to Christine in Dutchess County. If you're with us, good morning. You're on with Father Nathan Castle. Thank you for joining the Dr. Sky Experience. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm doing great. I have trouble sleeping, so I try and listen to interesting things at night, and I love the station, so I said, let's see what's going on tonight. This is fascinating to me, and I was raised Catholic, but then, like in the 80s, I got into like more New Age stuff, and I just love the whole idea of the beyond, and that it's not bad to think about these things and talk about these things. But as a Catholic, I always believed that this is bad stuff. Like, you don't go into this realm that Father Nathan is going into. Like, it's kind of like taboo. And so I just wonder, like, how, Father, did you get into this and feel comfortable enough to do this and to kind of bridge that gap? Or, like, is it frowned upon? Like, what do your peers think of this? And like they didn't kick you out, of the priesthood because you're doing this kind
of... No,
of...
it's very good,
weird...
Christine. Stay with us, and I would like Father Nathan to respond. You bring up some very interesting points here. Father, this is fascinating. People, of course, in the late hours, whatever it is, late night radio, of course, brings out many, many different topics and many different callers. And in this case, Christine has some very interesting commentary with questions.
Well, thanks for calling, Christine. I just knew when this happened the first time that it was a calling, and I had been praying for people who had passed for my whole life. So it didn't strike me as me dabbling into something that I shouldn't. I was just following the Holy Spirit's prompting, and we're careful. I always pray to St. Michael the Archangel and to Mary, the Mother of Jesus, and St. Dominic, the founder of my order. I don't pick up hitchhikers on earth or anywhere else. I think everyone is well made because God made everyone well, but not everyone is well behaved and in good company. So I try to be careful. I don't seek out people. I only help those who find me. I think that matters.
It does.
Christine, are you still on the line? Or I don't understand her.
Yes, I'm here.
She's here. No, I asked her father to stay on the line with us because we're having a conversation about this.
Okay, good. You asked, have I been sanctioned or anything, or is this approved? I took a vow of obedience to my religious superior, and we elect them. So over this first book came out now 70 years ago, and each of my provincials during that time has read what I've written before I published it and approved it. So I'm not doing anything that I've been forbidden to do. Does everyone like it? No. How do you get complete agreement on anything?
That's exactly right. And what we say, Father, and to all the loving folks who listen, of course, we're basically, here in this particular New York market, as we're all over the world here. But we always say this proudly. I'm a native New Yorker originally, too. How can you be originally? Of course, I was born there. I'm very proud of my New York heritage. We say 8.3 million people. With what, Christine? 36 million opinions. And, of course, all those opinions are important. But, Christine, you're like myself. I was raised Catholic, and I thought that some of these concepts, and the Father, of course, Father Nathan is bringing up today, I would imagine in the early days, maybe that wouldn't be, Christine, as well received as it is, at least for the most part today. We have bigger, open more minds. Wouldn't you agree, Christine, on these topics?
Yes, it appears so. And I'm glad about it because I've always had more of a view of spirituality it encompasses more than just what we're told, maybe, and that it's okay to explore, but also, you have to be careful, like the Father says, he protects himself because you could, I don't know if it's demons, but they say, you could invite demons in or you could attract some negative, energy or peoples, that have passed on or stuff like that. So, I don't know. I just think it's wonderful. I'm very glad that I listened tonight because I'm interested in all this quantum stuff. I don't understand it.
No, thank you. And listen, let me say this. As the host of this radio show, I certainly will never come across as the expert on this particular topic because really, truly, we all have these different subject matters coming to our, the forefront. Just like the Good Father and many people who study science, really, Christine, nobody has the answers. But what we'll do in the next hour, I hope you'll continue to listen, as everybody else is all over the world right now, to Talk Radio 77 WABC. With the Dr. Sky Experience, we'll get into more of what we think from the quantum side of science to try to interlace it with what the Good Father is saying here. But that's something for a future time. So, Christine, thank you for being part of our show. Hope you'll be a regular as we journey into these topics that maybe we don't always hear about, which we appreciate. Thank you, Christine. Yes, Father, I appreciate your time. We're going to go to the break in just a moment here, so we'll come back. We have more callers on the line, and I'm grateful, for your time, because I think this is a good opening act to talk with guests like yourself, because never, and I know you agree, we were talking offline, that it's really impossible to get all the questions and concerns on deep topics like this in just a short hour, because it goes very fast, and what we'll talk about when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, is more with Father Nathan Castle, on the story of the afterlife and what he's doing to kind of intercede. He's kind of like a navigator to move people to the next level, and this is a fascinating story. We'll be right back here on the Dr. Sky Experience.
Hi, this is Hugh Downs. You're listening to Dr. Sky on aviation and space and life.
Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. A quote from the great Albert Einstein as we continue here at 47 minutes after the hour with your questions and comments at 1-800-848-9222. An extended hour, the next hour, of course, with our very special guest. We appreciate his time, Father Nathan Castle, author of many books on spirituality and ways, too, in the afterlife, how to move people forward. This particular book series we'll be talking about, and also about the intercession of quantum mechanics and our study in religious faith. Well, Father, let's go to the callers. We welcome John in Queens. Good morning, John. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Sky. I think you chose a very good subject, and you're running a good show right now.
Thank you, sir.
My question here is that, well, it's a statement and a question. I have two friends that recently buried their mother, and when the mother had passed, it took, for various reasons, it took about 6 days until the mother was buried. And she was dead. You know, they had seen her several times before their burial. And as the burial was beginning, or as they were placing her into the ground, both of them began to feel something. They didn't really know what it was, but they started to suffocate. They felt something was wrong. But they continued the ceremony. Both of them felt very guilty afterwards, and to this day they've had breathing problems from that incident. And they don't know exactly what went wrong, but they both agree that something went wrong.
Father, I think this is interesting as we get into more of the emotional side. And John, please stay with us because I want the good Father to speak about this.
Well, hi, John. I don't know. That would be the most honest answer. I don't know. But where I would begin is if they really have a sense that there's something out of place. As Catholics, the first thing we do for people who have passed is to have a Mass said for them. Do you know how to do that?
John, are you with us?
No. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, John.
Yes.
Yeah,
John, do you know how to have a Mass said for someone?
I mean, I don't know, but I'm sure I could ask my priest, and he'll know.
Yeah, it's a standard thing that's done, through a parish office. Every time one of us says Mass, it's intended for a particular person or thing, like dedication.
Right.
When you're at a Catholic Mass, very often at the prayers of the faithful, there'll be a something like, today this Mass is being offered for the soul of Mary Smith. Let's praise the Lord. So that's always the default. The very first thing to do for the person is to have a Mass said for them. That's the first thing that I would do.
Okay.
I appreciate that. John, do you have a follow-up or another comment that you'd like to make or question? We have a little time.
Well, I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they went through with this, but what are the channels could they be looking at or down or towards?
Well, you could send them my way through my website. They could contact me, and I could talk with them individually and see if I could help them specifically.
Please give that info out again, Father. Give out your information.
Yeah, my website, John, is nathan-castle.com. When you go to it, there's a contact button like websites have. And
Nathan-council.com?
Nathan-castle.com.
Council, C-O-U-N-C-I-L.
No, Nathan, my last name is Castle, C-A-S-T-L-E, like a king or a queen lives in.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, got it.
Well, John, good morning. I thank you so much for being with us, and I hope you'll continue to be part of our journey as we talk about these mysterious and yet factual things and talk about these wonderful subject matters. And again, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask Tony, who do we have on the line? I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Let's say good morning to Frederick in Brooklyn. You're on with Father Nathan Castle. I call him Doctor, and obviously he's giving us this good information. Like a
gave me an honorary doctorate. Huh?
Well, there you go. He's Doctor Father Nathan Castle.
Good morrow, Dr. Castle, radio host. My concern is more spatial. I am curious to know what is the constituent difference between a planet and a star.
Oh, okay. Well, this is more of here we go from the science side to answer you very quickly. A star is a fusion ball that creates energy. A planet is an object that shines by light that's reflected, so it doesn't have it could have a heated core, but it doesn't have a fusion core. So simply, stars are, powered by fusion. They go on for billions of years. And when they die out, they explode, and we get what's classically called a supernova. But planets just shine by light, the remnants of stars that have exploded. So in the solar system, in the universe, we know the planets we have. But out in the galaxy, they're saying, wow, there could be over 1 billion of these exoplanets around other stars. Isn't that mind-boggling, don't you think?
Yes. But it sounds like it's more in-depth thing. I would have to directly just make further research about it, because that's really as you state, sound mind-boggling to.
Yes. The universe is magical. The universe is just magical. And we appreciate your call, because we got so much here in the pipeline. But ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing hour number 2 with our very special guest, Dr. Father Nathan Castle, as we talk to him about some things that necessarily most of us may not hear about moving people, as he explains, individual souls through this particular place that we called maybe purgatory. I don't know where that is. It's not located maybe in my downtown or your downtown, but we don't even know. But the concept of how science, religion, and all this energy moves together in one big phase. Father, this is fascinating information that you're giving us here. So talk a little bit more about your book, the series, Interrupted, this interrupted journey, as I call it, Interrupted the Afterlife. Talk a little bit more about this, because people out there may still have tons of questions, and I want to zoom in on the area of grief, loss. I mean, so many people, God bless. I haven't experienced it yet in full force, but I don't know how I'd handle it, and I don't know how people do. So tell us a little bit more.
Well, after that first experience with Ray all those years ago, nearly maybe 28 years ago, more of these dreams kept coming at the rate of about once a week. So I got used to the phenomenon, and so I began keeping a journal on the nightstand, so I didn't have to run around the house looking for something to write on, because the dream can disappear pretty quickly. So as soon as I would have one of these contact dreams, the thing that makes them so different from my regular psychobabble is they're usually violent. They're people that died in a traumatic, violent way.
That's so horrible. Yeah.
Well, it is, except that everybody survives their death, however it occurs.
Yes, and again, I have a special appeal to all those that lost loved ones on 9/11, not just at the New York City location, but all throughout that horrific day, and everyone who's lost someone. I mean, I can't imagine, Father, how anybody can even cope with the grief of that day of just 9/11 to talking about that. Were you involved in spiritually guiding people from those experiences from 9/11? I
haven't written about them, and I only go into detail with stories in public if I've gone back and asked the person's permission. After they crossed, we go back a second time and ask them if it's okay to tell their story in a book or on a podcast. But I can do that carefully. There's been a couple. There was one person who jumped to their death, and what he said was the choice that I had was to breathe air that was on fire or air that wasn't on fire.
Horrible.
And it's just that the air that was not on fire was out the window. And he said he didn't decide to jump. He decided to breathe. That's the way he put it. And
Amazing.
he said I could fall, but I couldn't land. In his imagination, he wouldn't let himself land. You can imagine that. And
I don't know. It's hard to. It's hard to concept. It's hard for me as a mortal to understand these concepts. But even more perplexing, I'm sure, to everyone listening out there, is the whole concept. The whole subject. Of the intercession of this whole quantum. The whole quantum universe into things that we believe. I've said many times on radio shows, Doctor, that the passage. Let's say when I had as an instructor Dr. Tombaugh, who discovered Pluto back when he was alive. And I used to say in his memorial, we would say, Dr. Tombaugh passed on to the infinite. I like to refer to that. I don't think anybody would split those words. But what we'll do in the next hour, we're going to get into a conversation with you and the listeners at 1-800-848-9222 in a little bit more details, not only from the father's perspective, from the, his perspective, from the religious perspective, but also talk about some of these different theories. And then hopefully, as we continue in hour number 2, to save time, to get your analysis of Pope Leo XIV. It seems like the Pope, Father, just came upon us really quickly, didn't he? It was like I was expecting a longer time period, but that happened relatively fast in papal ordination terms. Yes.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, after the break, I'd like to finish that story that I was just...
Oh, okay. No, we certainly don't want to cut you short. We just want to make sure we get a chance to have all the callers that come in here because... It's a special time, ladies and gentlemen, and we're doing this to expand not only our horizons with guests, but to give everybody out there an opportunity, which they may not have, because I get a lot of emails, and those emails are simply at drsky@wabcradio.com, and those emails simply say, we'd love to have more time with individual guests, because we tried and we're patient to hang on the line. So we're trying to go ahead and do that, and we do appreciate it. So, Father, we'll be back after this break as we move to the top of the hour here, talking all about these things that go on in the spiritual world and in the quantum world. And one of the things that the good Father has said in his book, when he talks about another one of the experiences he's had with contactees, people contacting him, he says this, and I say it very simply, and he'll say it better: don't let the worst thing that happened to you define you. Very well said, Father.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.